Stay tuned. Coming up is my interview with Phil Jose as we talk about tactical decision games. Hello and welcome to the Situational Awareness Matters Show, episode 398. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. Today's feature segment is sponsored by Gasaway Virtual Training. There are 33 online training programs there for you to choose from. Some of the programs are live events presented virtually, and some of the programs are pre-recorded programs. To learn more, visit the samatters.com website and click on the Virtual Training tab. Okay, let's jump into our feature segment and my interview with Phil Jose, talking about tactical decision games. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Situational Awareness Matters Show. Today I have back now for the second time Phil Jose from, used to be from the Seattle Fire Department. He's since retired and now lives in Idaho. Phil was a deputy chief when he retired from the Seattle Fire Department. He chaired their SOG and their post-incident action committees. He was the fire chief of the year in 2013. He's been an FDIC instructor for 19 years and had the highest attended class in 2023, The Art of Reading Smoke. FDIC 2008 Tom Brennan Training Achievement Award was given to Phil, and he's the author of Instructor 1 for the Fire and Emergency Services, Air Management for the Fire Service, Training the Trainer, the Fire Engineering Handbook for Firefighter 1 and 2, and Bread and Butter Video for SCBA. In addition to the Art of Reading Smoke, Phil teaches in the hot seat tactical decision making on the Fireground. So let me read a description here that Phil had provided about what tactical decision making is. Tactical decision games are low-tech, low-cost method of wargaming adapted to tactical decision training. Wargaming has been used to improve the strategic and tactical thinking of armies since the late 1700s and likely even before. The Prussian army instituted focused war games using the colors red and blue for the opponents. The use of war games spread among professional soldiers quickly as it demonstrated the ability to improve outcomes of war. Wartime leaders can use tactical decision games as simple, cost-effective, and repeatable simulated battles to win wars and save lives. This class adapts those same wargame techniques and introduces the fire service trainers to their use. Modern tactical decision gaming was reintroduced to the United States Marine Corps using monthly exercises called Tactical Decision Games, printed in the Marine Gazette. The articles laid out a battle scenario with information including maps, mission objectives, and information about the enemy, and when posed, the problem for readers to submit their response. Anyone, regardless of rank, could develop and submit their battle plan to the Gazette. A selection of responses is then published in the following issue. The format for these tactical decision games was done in writing and around the world. This format is also used in person at the squad, company, and battalion level. In modern learning environments, fire tactical decision games can be done across extended learning platforms. This does not mean they must be expensive and complicated. Simple exercises using low-cost or no-cost development techniques allow a fire service trainer to begin using a fire gaming philosophy through tactical decision gaming in person or across the web. Welcome, Phil.
Thanks, Rich. Yeah, it sounds like a lot more when you're reading it than it did when I wrote it.
Well, I wanted to make sure I got it all, so I didn't want to just go off memory. I'm like, oh, there's enough there that I probably should just read it. So I had you on back in episode 11, but way back when the show was brand new in 2014, and I was in Seattle doing a situational awareness program somewhere around Seattle. I can't remember exactly where it was, and I stopped by to visit you at the training center there, and we sat down and did a episode on improving firefighter safety through training and post-incident reviews. So anybody that's interested in seeing what Seattle Fire Department was doing at that time, and I don't know if they're still, doing what you were doing then in 2014. I'm sure it's probably been enhanced some since then. But you can go back and watch or listen to episode 11. It would only be listen, because back then the show was only audio. We didn't do it on YouTube like we do today. So it would be a listen only episode. But it's been a long time, so welcome back.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me back. We started talking earlier. It was like, wow, that's almost a decade, and it shows you how quickly time goes by. And it's funny because I wasn't even teaching the art of reading smoke then. Only Dave Dodson was teaching, and he's since sort of handed that off to me. But it's interesting how your career has these it bends and turns in ways that you never would have expected. I never would have expected 10 years ago to be teaching the art of reading smoke and tactical decision making, as opposed to air management, which at that time was still relatively new to the fire service.
So, is air management something that's still taught by you at this point in the game, or not?
Well, one of the things you were saying is like, does Seattle still do these things? And yeah, like the post-incident analysis committee is still going. You can track over the course of, the decade, maybe a little more, because that was 2014 was sort of in its infancy, but you can track changes that the department has made to any aspect of firefighting. It has improved because of the consistent pattern of reviewing and saying, is this the best way to meet the mission? What can we change? And I mean, from the command level, the way resources are deployed, the way they're tracked in the command post, the way they make up the fire attack team on single family residences. I mean, there's probably not a tactical or strategic aspect of firefighting in the Seattle Fire Department that hasn't been touched. And they occasionally even do a podcast now where they interview the primary responders. And so just an idea about, to track it back to your question about air management, it's taught from day one. At least in the Seattle Fire Department, I know many departments have adopted that philosophy of teaching firefighters to keep track of how much air you have an innate sense of, or just look at the gauge once in a while and develop an innate sense of where I am in this building, where I am in my task, how far am I from my means of egress, how much air have I used, how much do I have left, and to build this into just a pattern that they have of understanding how much air is life, right? So if you run out, that's a big problem, particularly in today's smoke environment. And so I just recently reviewed a podcast that they had about a fire. I think they made 14, now don't quote me, but 14 rescues, and had, or maybe it was 7 rescues and 14 emergency traffic. Anyways, a big event, right? A major fire in a major apartment building, ordinary construction, so wet walls and the whole shooting match, right? People hanging out the windows when they got there, the whole deal. And just to listen to firefighters who I've never met, because they've got less than 5 years, talk about how they, when they're in apartments with people, the hallway is so polluted, there's no way to take the people out. They're looking at their air going, how much do I have? How far is it? Like, can we get relief up here? And in the meantime, they're managing And so they're so good at it that it's just a tacit understanding of a skill level that's so ingrained in their behavior that it's not even something that they think about. Whereas when we started it, man, I mean, you had to think about it because we'd spent years not paying any attention at all to how much air we had in the SCBA, and leading to almost one real tragedy in the Seattle Fire Department, where a member came out of a upper floor window and survived the experience, but certainly sustained significant injuries, and then 3 other events that were near-death experiences, including one member that was pulled out in full respiratory arrest, right? So we didn't just do that out of willy-nilly. We did that. And I think all 4 of those events were in less than 1 year. And so we was like, hey, we just can't keep doing this. We're gonna pay the real price eventually if we don't do something about this. And so to close out, it's just to see that the firefighters who are there now, like they don't even know a different way, Rich. That's just the way they do it. They have no idea that we used to do all this craziness of teaching people just use it all up and then hope, and so you can see that bend that curve over the course of time.
Yeah. So sorry I digressed a little bit onto the topic of air management, because not what we're here to talk about, but it's an interesting perspective as to how it has evolved for you. So what's your background with tactical decision making, and how did you become interested in this?
So starting around the same time as I was digging into how to teach the air management stuff, I came across Gary Klein's work, and I'm sure you're familiar with his work on how people, recognition prime decision making, and how people make decisions under stress and time elements. And he had some training exercises in his books that I thought, well, can I take this format and create a fire department training session? And so I just started to do that, as a captain, and then as a battalion chief, even before I got into the training division. I just started doing it because I had a responsibility to train people, and I was interested in training. And I'd been involved in the operations training for Seattle, since the late '90s, and so I sort of had the ability to try things and do them at the company level, or I'd get a couple of companies together, and so I started doing essentially the same process I'm doing now. I'm a little better at creating them now after some trials and tribulations, but even something as simple as drawing a 2-story wood frame single family residence house on a whiteboard, with the street, and the hydrant's 300 feet this way, and the fire's in this room, and then just saying, okay, if you showed up here first, give me your size up and tell me what you want the first 2 engines and the first 2 truck to do. How do you, the NFPA term would be the incident action plan. How do you see this playing out? And then we can start to take that apart, dissect the pieces, or even take your plan and go, hey, okay, what would you do if this happened? Or who else in the room sees something here that they really like? What do you like about this plan? What are the reasons why this plan will work? Okay, what are the reasons why this plan will fail? And so developing that underlying process of putting people in situations, having them create in a short time frame a tactical plan, communicate that plan effectively, which is, as you know, Rich, is a big piece of what we do is communicate plans. I tell you what I need you to do, and then my wording has to be short, and you have to understand it, right, in order for the thing to move forward. So I just started doing them, and I just found them to be really, really powerful methods of getting across ideas and challenging people's ideas within the group, and so the more I got into them, the more I started to go, okay, how do I get good at this how do I get good at this? Right? Like, this really works. How do I even get better at it? And so then I started to research. I came across a book called Mastering Tactics, which is a Marine Corps book written by John Schmidt. I see you have a Marine Corps plaque on the wall there. So John Schmidt is the one who wrote the exercises that were in the Marine Corps Gazette. He has a book called Mastering Tactics, which can be downloaded for free. It's all Marine focused, but the basics of how to put something together are encapsulated in that book. And so I just started, again, adopt that. So you're talking about, I mean, there's aspects of the fire service that are doing this, things like sand table exercises that they use in wildland. It's very much a tactical decision game, right? People are using these techniques, and that's great. And it's just a matter of saying, hey, these techniques have a history, they have a learning curve, they have a way that you can be better as an instructor. There's ways that we can enhance the learning opportunity for our people, and realistically, you can do these. Like I said, drawing a picture on a whiteboard doesn't cost anything except the time to train, right? And on the other end of the spectrum is the $30 million command training center with videos for every single participant that are different, right? That's the same thing, but a much higher technology, money-driven, process-based. It's still valuable training. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that for the average, if you're a company officer, a chief officer right now, and you want a way to train, you don't have to wait till somebody's willing to spend $10 million. You can take these sim techniques and repeat them every single shift for almost no money other than and just your willingness to train and to learn how to do
it. Is the tactical decision games, is it like a version of war games, or what? And I'm not even sure that I know what I'm saying when I say war games. It was in the intro, so maybe you need to unpack that a little bit for me too.
Sure. Yeah. So if we looked at a typical war game that, if we look at a tactical decision game like they have in the Marine Corps Gazette, you'll have a map. You'll have some information about the energy, about the enemy, and what their goals and objectives are, at least as far as you might understand them. And as you can imagine, Rich, some of the things that you want to do in a tactical decision game is not give people all of the information, right? There has to be some uncertainty, because we have a lot of uncertainty when we arrive at a fire event, right? There's no way you're ever going to know everything about what's happening, right? And so you have to, one of the skills you have to build as an incident commander, as a person in decision making, when you're on the tip of the spear, is to have a bias for action, even if you're uncertain, right? You can't just wait until you have all the information, right? So you have information, you have a map, so you understand the terrain, you understand, you'll, in a military scenario, you'll be given the commander's intent, the rules of engagement, because you can't be fired unless you're fired upon, and some things like that. And then the situation develops, and then invariably there'll be, the enemy will do something that's unexpected, which enemies are wont to do, right? And that's the nice thing about for military people, is that the enemy has its own will, right, and its own creative thinkers. And so so given the situation and given what the enemy's doing now, if you're running a company or a fire team, right, as small as you can make it, you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do right now. There's one that's I think it's in the book, where I think it's a squad that's on patrol and they come under fire, right? And so it's twilight, like it's almost dark, right? So if you're a squad leader and you have to you have to react, and you have to react right now. As soon as you come under fire, you have to react. You have to give orders. You have to send people, cover under fire, move, don't move. Like there's a bunch of options, and some of them are sort of known. And so you basically do the same thing, and you say, hey, here's the situation as it exists. You're going to be the first arriving officer. You can even have everybody in the room be the first arriving officer. And you say, everybody in this room, create a plan for, be ready, because I'm going to call on you to be first in here. And then you give them, 20, 30 seconds to sort of get their mind together. And then you either ask for a volunteer or point somebody out and say, okay, give me your size up, and then give me the directives for the second arriving engine, on the radio. Give the second arriving directives, give the truck company directives. And then, so they do it by the numbers, right? Really pretty short from a time perspective. And then you go, okay, now then you sort of break it. You go, okay, let's talk about this plan. Let's talk about these first 2 or 3 or 4 moves. And are those the most effective moves? Are they the least effective moves? Are they, where can we prod around the edges? Okay, how will we know that this is working? What will we see or hear on the Fireground that will know this is working? And invariably, if you have 3 or 4 people in the range of experiences, 5 years to 15 years, which I think would be kind of an average company, or even a bigger group. If you have 15 people on a drill night, you're going to have some experience in that room that's going to be able to answer those questions. And so you're taking that information, and you're saying, like, from somebody who's experienced says, oh, we'll know that it's working because X, Y, and Z. That person's knowledge is being transferred to everybody in the room at that point. How will we know it's not working? Or what will happen that we'll know that we need to change direction? And somebody in the room will have that information. And the nice thing as an instructor is it's not you saying all these things, right? It's members of the organization, members of the company, members of the battalion, members of the department, whatever the group is that you have together, giving each other knowledge. And it's almost certainly, you can, like, if you wanted to, Rich, design something where you wanted to talk about when to pull 1 3/4 and when to pull 2 1/2, you could just find some videos that you thought were right on the borderline, some that were borderline, but you would go 1 3/4, and some that were borderline, but you would go 2 1/2, and then take them out and just run them with people and say, hey, what do you think here? What do you think there? What would, put them in the decision, have them make the decision, right? Don't just show them the video and say, which line would you use, but put them in the position of being the company officer, making the decision, realistically making the decision in their head. And with you'd find some that were on the borderline, but you'd probably, if you took 10 videos, you probably could find where you was like 4 on one side, 4 on the other side, and 2 that were like on the edge. And then you could build a training program around those 10 videos and train all the other officers like, hey, in these sorts of, especially new officers, here's the sorts of situations where you'd be effective with 1 3/4. Here's the situations where you'd be effective with 2 1/2. And here's some that are right on the edge, right? And so, yeah, the amount that you can train, the depth and breadth is once you start doing it, is pretty staggering. And again, you're not waiting for someone else to determine that you can train your people. You're just grabbing it by the horns and saying, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna, if it's, it's Minnesota and it's pouring down snow and it's 15 below, maybe there's an opportunity for us to get some really high value training while we're in the station. Or even when we're locked down, like, you're locked down because there's a tornado warning or whatever, right? Like, take these opportunities to put these situations in the classroom setting, but put people under, I mean, it would be perceived pressure on their part, but as long as they perceive pressure, as you know, their mind is treating it as if it's real pressure, right? It won't be the same as being an event, but it's very, very close from a psychological perspective.
Why would a situational awareness audience, why should they embrace the tactical decision gaming concept as a training tool?
Well, because part of to me, decision making, and not just me, but based on the reading and research and the people that I've learned from, decision making is it's largely a pattern matching exercise. One pattern is how do you understand the situation? How well do you understand the situation from, like my reading smoke class, from the volume, velocity, density of smoke, from the neighborhood that you're going to and the standard house that's built in that neighborhood and the hydrant spacing in that neighborhood. Or is it a commercial, right? So you're developing your understanding of the situation from the time that you get notified, and you're drawing on all this tacit knowledge. What does the address tell me, right? So that's one pattern, is how well you understand the situation. And there's ways to learn to understand the situation better, right? And then the other pattern is, at least in my opinion, is developed on the training ground and from your actual experience. When I say to stretch a hose, how long does it take? And I don't mean on a stopwatch. I mean an intrinsic understanding that if I say to go to the front door, that takes this long. If I say to go to the back door, that takes this long. If it's on floor 2, like from the time you launch from the apparatus, even on a single family residence, till you can actually be up the stairs, I need to have an understanding of, if I'm making that decision, if I'm giving that directive, I have to have an understanding of how long that's going to take. And then I have to pattern match that to the situation and say, is this going to work? Right? That's the question. I take the pattern of my understanding of the situation and my pattern of my understanding of my company or battalion or department's tactics and strategy and how that works. And those have to match each other. And when those match each other, now I can take action. And so what we're doing in a tactical decision game is challenging people both on their understanding of the situation as it's presented, right? And their understanding of how things work in their organization, right? And so part of it is like, okay, if I'm designing this thing, what do I want to provide as information? And so sort of a baseline is to give people all the information they would normally have, right? And so what companies are responding, how many people are on each company, what's the average deviation between companies, those sorts of things, right? Those are sort of givens within a particular fire department. If I tell you an address in your district, you probably know quite a bit about the neighborhood and the average clientele. I mean, I did one last week to the officer development program in Kentucky, and I showed him the hotel, and I said, "Hey, it was like a Red Roof Inn fire, right?" And one of the company, I said, "Is there any questions about the building itself?" Because they would know. Everybody stayed at the Red Roof Inn or knows what it looks like or whatever, right? So I'm not trying to hide information that they would actually have, but you still have to leave some uncertainty. Anyway, he says, "How often do we go here on drug overdoses?" Well, that's a company officer I know is paying attention. He knows which hotels, which motels in his district have a high drug use, which ones are rent by the hour, which ones are high, likely to have a chest pain versus a drug overdose, right? Not that they can't, but there's a house in your district where diabetic Debbie lives, right? And you just know that because everybody in your station has been to see her. Everybody knows her address. Everybody knows what color her house is. So there's all this intrinsic information. But when you're setting this up, you want to figure out if you want to establish a situation that is clear enough for them to make good decisions, but not so clear that there aren't any decisions to make. And so that's sort of there's a little bit of trial and error here, but part of it is you understanding, if you're the trainer, if you're the developer, you understanding what you're trying to get across. What are the, sometimes when I teach these people, like, well, there's no learning objectives. Like, no, I go into every situation understanding what I think the learning objectives are going to be. And so I have a goal and I have a plan. So I'm trying to set up the situation. So from a situational awareness perspective is I want to know what the givens are, and I want to know what the gray areas are. And I want to know where there's no information available, or at least I'm not going to provide information as the trainer, and then put them in the situation where they're arriving and they have some information, but not all the information, and they still have to make decisions because we have to have a bias for action. We just can't wait around. So the more you know about how these situations go together, the better you can design that training module. But you'll have to recognize too that one of the things I think is so fun about doing these things is you never can be 100% sure what training is going to take place, because there's so much creativity in them that invariably there's going to be some learning that takes place that you're surprised by it, and mostly pleasantly surprised, and you go, wow, I never would have thought that we would have this discussion about this thing. Like I in the not that one that I do with the Motel 6, but a different one where it's a center hallway. I can remember going in with a group of officers, and we spent the entire training time, or close to the entire training time, talking about how if you're doing a center hallway search, Rich, and you go in and you go to an apartment and you find a family of 5, grandma's in the wheelchair, mom and dad are there, they have an infant and a 6-year-old, but the hallway's polluted. What's your plan? Right? What are you going to do? So putting people in a situation to be able to think through that and to go, okay, here's some actions I could take. Here's the communications I need to make. Here's how right? Because that's a complex problem that a very new, like just out of recruit school almost person, somebody's barely off probation, right? Seattle's hired like 400 people in 5 years. Like you got somebody with 2 years in that's got a probie, and they're on the search team, and they're having to make that decision. Okay, so let's give them an opportunity to at least think through it ahead of time, right? At least they have one rep of being in an apartment, at least in their mind, being in an apartment. They can't take the people out the hallway, and what are they going to do? At least when they do it at the fire scene, it's not the first time. It's not the first time they've thought about it. And so, did I plan for that discussion to happen? No. Was it on my learning objectives? No. But I think you probably agree that that's a pretty valuable piece of learning that can take place with 15 company officers, some of whom have 30 years experience and some of whom who just got promoted yesterday.
All right, let me take the essay question and invert it. How would tactical decision gaming audiences benefit from taking a situational awareness class to learn the tools and techniques for developing and maintaining strong situational awareness to be able to make accurate and timely intuition-driven decisions? I suspect that in your class, you're teaching some components of situational awareness, but like when I teach a situation awareness class, it takes a whole day, and then I'm probably still not covering everything that needs to be covered, even in a whole day. And when you're doing tactical decision games, obviously you can't cover in depth what a separate class would be dedicated to on situational awareness. So how would tactical decision game audiences benefit from an SA class?
I think, well, I'm a big believer in fire service education. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a trainer, right? I've been in and around training since, my mom was a kindergarten teacher, and the first I started going to kindergarten in her belly, right? I've been in and around teaching and education literally my entire life, and so when I'm teaching a class and some of the topics come up. I flat out tell people, it's like, look, you need to, if you want to know more about this, you need to get Rich's situational awareness book. You need to go to his classes. You need to learn what he's offering. And the same thing with the art of reading smoke class, right? There's this or a building construction class, or whatever classes that you want to think about. What you should do? You should find somebody in the water department where you work or where you volunteer, and you should get them to explain to you how the water system works in your district. And if you're in a small part of a big city, you should understand which direction do the mains run, and where are the big ones and where are the little ones. Like all of this understanding. If you want to be a subject matter expert in firefighting, there's a broad array of subjects. I think it's true of any endeavor. There's a broad array of subjects where if you're not a subject matter expert, you know one, and you're trying to learn as much as you can through your self-study, through your group study. If you're a fire service professional and you haven't spent any time at the ULFSRI website, I would say you're probably deficient in your skills. There's so much information available, and so can we talk about do I talk about things like auditory exclusion? You bet I do. I can put people in a situation. I mean, when we were doing Chiefs Mayday training, the sims were designed, the chiefs experienced auditory exclusion. They're standing in the command post. There's a Mayday that's clearly you can hear it over the radio, and it just goes right by them. And before that, they would have said, oh, I would never, ever miss a Mayday. Okay, right? And if you put people under the stress, if you engage their mind in some other activity, like what, and then once they've actually experienced it, they go, oh, I can experience auditory exclusion. What are the tools, techniques, tricks? Well, I'm not giving you all that stuff in this class. What I'm telling you is you experience this, and it's a problem, and you should learn about it and learn how you react to it and figure out your strategies for how you're going to manage it. When I was in the command post, if I was going to engage someone in a face-to-face conversation, like a company officer comes out of the hazard area and they've got wide eyes and they want to talk to me, I'm going to listen to them. And before I do that, I'm going to turn to somebody else in the command post. I'm going to say, you have radio. Now they know they are responsible to listen. Whatever other tasks they may have had don't matter now. The only thing that matters is that they're listening to the radio. And so now I can engage with the company officer, really listen to what they have to offer me, which is probably very valuable information, right? So that I took from you, like understand what auditory exclusion is, develop strategies to get around it, all those sorts of things. What I can do in the tactical decision gaming environment is put people in situations where they can experience some of these things. And understanding that they're actually experiencing that on the incident command scene on a regular basis. They just don't know it, and there's nobody there at the time. In the training environment, I'm watching them for this stuff, right? Or I have somebody on the training team who's actually watching for this stuff to occur, so that we know it happened. But that's not happening at the incident scene. What it sounds like on the incident scene is when people call command and command doesn't answer. They call them again and command doesn't answer. And they call them again and then command doesn't answer. Well, there's two choices. Either they're just ignoring all those conversations, or, which is possible, right? I mean, it's possible there's something else more valuable happening. They're hearing it and they're going, it's just not, it's not my priority right now. It might be the priority of that person who's calling me, but it's not my priority. Or more, at least some of the time, that's happening because the incident commander is experiencing auditory exclusion and they're not hearing it. And so that's where the TDG says, okay, you didn't hear this. Oh, do you want me to play it back on the radio? Because I have the recording, right? Do you want to hear what it actually sounded like at the time that you say you didn't hear it? Because it was pretty clear, right? And so it's about creating the situations to put people in, to give them sets and reps and sets and reps and sets and reps, low cost, highly repeatable. You do have to be a reasonably good facilitator to make these things happen, because you have to be open. You have to be honest. You have to be trusting, right? You have to be able to guide a discussion in a professional, collegial way to get all of the gold that you can mine from these things. And occasionally the trainees have to be the same, right? They have to be willing to put themselves out there. They have to be willing to make mistakes. I'm sure you're the same as me, where mistakes in training are opportunities, right? They're just opportunities. There should be no shame or pressure or any of those sorts of things that are associated with mistakes on the fireground. Mistakes on the training ground. Mistakes on the fireground can be tragedies, right? And we want to avoid those. The way we avoid those is by training. And this is just one, right? This is just one element of training where we're matching, like, how well can you develop your situational awareness? Can you recognize? I mean, think about this, Rich. If you get really good at recognizing, if I put a chief in a situation and go, okay, tell me right now who's got the most important piece of information that you don't know, and they look at the scene as they've developed it and they go, engine 4. Okay, now they've got a mindset where they can go, wait a minute, who do I actually want to hear from right now? Right? They're starting to develop the process of understanding, instead of just sort of willy-nilly asking everybody for a progress report. I can say, okay, they're number 1. Who's number 2? Okay, now I don't even, honestly, in the command post, you probably don't need to get past 1 or 2, right, before you need to take some other action. But by putting people in the experience of having just a little bit of discretionary time to go, who would I like to hear from now? Who's got information I need, right? That's a rep of that skill. And if we can have a rep of that skill every shift for this year, well, that's 100 reps, right? And how many reps are you going to get at the fireground where you have the discretionary time to really think about who's the most valuable? And so you develop that skill to where you can sort of innately go, okay, you know who I need to hear from right now? I need to hear from them. What's going on where they are? And I think that fits beautifully with the situational awareness and understanding how to develop SA, where the challenges of SA are. Strategies to eliminate the weaknesses and maximize the strengths of whatever the SA is that I have right now. The more I understand about SA, the better I can do that. The skill of doing it can be developed through sets and reps of tactical decision games.
How does someone get started with tactical decision games?
One way would be just download Mastering Tactics and read what John Schmidt has to offer on the subject. It's a military environment. I think there are some distinct differences between the military environment and the environment that we're in. And if those interests, if you think they're of interest to the audience, we could talk about those. But understanding Gary, at least reading Gary's work on what recognition prime decision making is, and I'm going to trust that a lot of your audience has read that stuff already, or at least has read Gary's stuff, probably not John Schmidt stuff. Although he wrote Warfighting for the Marine Corps, probably a lot of your audience has read either MP, DP1, or FMFM1, depending on what generation you are when you read that thing the first time. He wrote that document with the help, for the commandant. Anyway, and then in Gary's work, there's some things called, like he calls it, there's called a pre-mortem is one of the things that, so if they looked up the term pre-mortem and listened to some of the podcasts that Gary Klein's done on pre-mortem, that's just one technique, right? If they think about a very simple war game is called is Risk, right? I'm going to guess a lot of your audience has probably played Risk at least once, and just creatively think about how do I. What you're trying to do is create a situation with a map or a drawing, some resources, right? Institutionally, you'll have SOGs or some version of SOG, or even if you don't have a written SOG, you have a sort of a way that you do things, and you just lay out just enough, and then put people in the hot seat of having to make a decision. Right. And say, okay, give me your size up, give me your instant action plan for the first 2 engines in first truck company. And then communicate those orders. And communicate those orders. And then then you put them under that time pressure for a short period of time. But then you have a facilitated discussion about the plan and how the plan works and how it went together and what their thoughts are on the plan, for 15 minutes even. You can introduce some changes, or you could go when I have an audience, a lot of times we'll put a plan on the board and we'll talk about that plan for 10 or 12 minutes. I do it, my rule of thumb is I'm sort of looking for big hunks of gold, right? Like, or let's just use dollars. Like, I like picking up dollar bills, and 50-cent pieces are pretty good. And once in a while I'll pick up a quarter. But if the information is the pennies and nickels and dimes, I'm going to move on to the next solution so we can get back to collecting gold instead of collecting silver. So, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right. So there's a rhythm and flow to these things that you develop over the course of time. But the way to start is to start. The way to start is to do a little bit of reading, come up with a relatively simple exercise that's either a whiteboard exercise, or you're going to show a video and say, hey, we're going to a house fire in this neighborhood. Find a video. You have a neighborhood in your district. You find a video on YouTube that has the same kind of houses, slab on grade, 1-story, slab on grade, 2-story, McMansion, whatever it is, right? As long as it matches or really pretty closely matches something you have in your response area. Say, hey, you're on your way to a fire at 123 Main Street, and here's the engines that are coming, right? The people are going to know that. Here's the address. Okay, you're on your way there. You see from a half mile out, you see a column of smoke, and then here's your arrival, and you play the video for 15 seconds, and then you go stop. It's like, okay, give me your size up and your instant action plan. You can give them a little bit of time if you want, but you don't have to, right? And give them 10 seconds to come up with their size up and their instant action plan, or 15 seconds or whatever. You don't want to give them minutes, right? You want it to be relatively pressured. And don't identify who's going to give who's in the hot seat before, like, have everybody be in the hot seat at that moment, and then pick one plan and talk about that plan. And so, and then if that plan, if you talk about it enough to where you think you're not collecting the big pieces of gold anymore, just erase it and then ask somebody else their plan. And there's some things that are very common that are going to happen. And so that's how you get started, right? Is to read a little bit and then get started, right? Do it. Because it doesn't, again, Rich, it doesn't cost you anything, right? You don't have to ask for permission. You don't have to have somebody's approval. You don't have to do any of that stuff. If you want to train people, or you have a cadre of 5 or 6, I mean, I'm just thinking about people where I know that their organization is just not training focused. And that's unfortunate, but they know 5 officers who are training focused. Do 1 or 2 of these and then challenge everybody else. Like, everybody in this room develop one of these, and we're going to get together once a week, and we're going to present 2 of these every week. You're going to do one next week. You're going to do one, and you're going to do one. And the other, there's 6 of us. The other people are going to be the students, and we're just going to go round and round and round and round, and pick whatever kind of problem you want. And again, nothing but time, a little bit of mental energy to put these things together, which, as you know, is its own skill developer, right? Putting the curriculum together, you learn a lot about what you think is important by putting together a training scenario. You're developing each other's skills as presenters, as trainers. You can do a feedback session afterwards. Like, I mean, think about the power of having 5 or 6 people who need nothing from the organization. Now, that's true, but if you're in a position where you can influence the training and you can help develop the training, these are still almost either low or no cost options. You're not going to need a $300,000 or $500,000 budget, or a $5 million new facility that, honestly, if you even started building it today, by the time you got the tax revenue and got it through the city council and purchased the land and built the building, that's going to happen after you're gone. But tomorrow you could do one of these scenarios. If you just spent 15 or 20 or 30 minutes today thinking about how that's going to work. And you know what? It's not going to be perfect. It may not even be good, but you'll have started down the path, and your scenarios will get better. You'll get better. The people around you will get better. People who are interested in training will seek you out. You know what I mean? Like, that path is so self-driven that if you want to do it, you can get started, and you can get started as soon as this podcast is over.
If someone wanted to reach you, how would they find you?
Well, they can always, my website is called ignitionpointtraining.com, because I'm trying to set your mind on fire, Rich. So ignitionpointtraining.com. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel that's under my full name, Philip Joes, Philip with 2 L's. If they just search my name in Firefighter, they'll probably come across my website or my YouTube page. All that stuff is pretty easy. My email is phil@ignitionpointtraining.com. Right. So I'm available for this stuff. And I hope your audience can tell, either from this one or the last podcast we did this. I think training is so much fun, and you learn so much, even as the instructor. The amount you learn is just incredible. And so, this mindset, or this ability to train, low cost, high rep, really, really valuable sort of training. I mean, there's a reason why armies have been doing it for centuries, right? And all we have to do is sort of adapt that. I mean, if it didn't work, trust me, they wouldn't do it, right? And the skill set it's attainable. It's so attainable, Rich.
Good. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing the tactical decision game concept and helping our listeners and viewers understand what it is. I hope it isn't 10 years before we're back together again on another episode. It was kind of shocking to me to know that it had been that long since the last time. It's like I blinked my eyes and 10 years went by. Um, but if you want to hear the other episode, remember that it's episode 11, way back at the start of the show in 2014. Phil, is there anything that you want to share that you didn't get a chance to share because I didn't ask the right question?
Yeah, I don't think so, Rich. I think on this tactical decision gaming and how to get started and why it's valuable. I think you've done a good job of pulling that information out of me, as willing as I am to talk about it.
Okay, well, thank you again for being on the show, and I'll look forward to our next meetup.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Phil Joes, for sharing information with us today about tactical decision games. If you've been following along on my social media, you know that I took a 6-month sabbatical earlier in the year from April to September. For the 14 years prior to the pandemic, I consistently delivered 90 to 120 programs a year. That was a pretty grueling schedule. So taking some time off helped me to recharge my batteries and helped me to remind me of just how passionate I am about the topic of situational awareness. And that time off also provided some opportunities for our master instructors who've been trained on presenting the topic to be able to step up and deliver some programs as well. And now, as Willie Nelson most famously said, I'm on the road again. And if you're interested in joining me for an upcoming event, here's where I'm going to be. On December 9, I will be in Ocean City, Maryland, delivering a program for the Maryland Fire Chiefs Association on situational awareness. And this is the 4th program that I've delivered for the Maryland Fire Chiefs Association. So thank you for the faith and my message in giving me this opportunity. January 22nd through February 2, I will be back at the Syncrude Oil Refinery in Fort McMurray, Alberta. At the conclusion of this visit, I will have delivered 71 programs for Syncrude as part of their Periods of High Vulnerability program, where we help process operators with the skills needed to have better situational awareness and to improve their high-risk decision-making. On February 5 through 9, I will be at the Suncor Edmonton Refinery in Edmonton, Alberta. Now, Suncor is the parent company to Syncrude. And since Syncrude has experienced, in their words, not mine, a fundamental change in their organizational culture as a result of our training, the program is being rolled out to all their refineries. So this will be our 3rd visit to the Suncor Edmonton facility. On February 10, I'll be at the Canada Task Force 2 training in Calgary, Alberta. And this will be my first time presenting to the Canada Task Force 2 group, so I'm really excited for that chance. On February 29th, I will be delivering an administrative situational awareness program. So for those people in administrative and leadership roles, for the Center for Public Safety Excellence Conference in Orlando, Florida. And that'll be the 8th time that I've been given the opportunity to present at the CPSE Excellence Conference. So thank you to CPSE for your faith and confidence in my mission and message. March 1 through 2, I'll be at the Spotsylvania Volunteer Fire Department in Spotsylvania, Virginia. This will be my 2nd program delivered for Spotsylvania Volunteer Fire Department. The first one was during the pandemic and it was virtual. So now that we've made the turn on the pandemic, they're having me come in and deliver 2 days of live situational awareness training. On March 4 and 5, I'll be at the University of Maryland's National Fire Service Staff and Command Program in Annapolis, Maryland. And this will be my 22nd year presenting at the National Fire Service Staff and Command Program. So thank you to the Maryland Fire Rescue Institute for your faith and confidence in my mission, and for now 22 opportunities to present to your conference attendees. March 19 and 20, I'll be at the Taos County Fire Department in Red River, New Mexico. And I'm especially excited for this program as New Mexico is the only state that I had not yet presented a situational awareness program. And next April, that comes off the bucket list, and all 50 states will have been completed as far as having hosted situational awareness programs. Our master instructors are also working hard to add programs. So collectively, we've got more than 30 programs scheduled just in the September to December 23 time slot. So if you want to see all the upcoming programs, just visit the SA Matters website, and they're all listed there under the live training link. I also want to thank some of the recent program hosts and consultation opportunities we've had. On September 27, I conducted a training for failure program for the Swissvale Fire Department. They're a suburb of Pittsburgh. This was the 6th program I delivered for Swissvale. So thank you to Chief Clyde Wilhelm for hosting me. And several of those programs were done for fire departments all around the Pittsburgh region. So I appreciate that. On September 28th, I facilitated a discussion with line of duty death investigators from NIOSH. That's the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. They're located in Morgantown, West Virginia. And these are the investigators that evaluate firefighter line of duty death incidents. And they are interested in incorporating situational awareness, high-risk decision-making, and human factors and human error into their investigations and reports. So I'm working with them on how to help them do that. On September 29th and 30th, I conducted 2 programs for the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department in Wisconsin, and one was on situational awareness, and one was on preparing for your climb down the ladder, preparing for retirement or your departure from the fire service, chosen or not chosen, that happens. On October 4th, I gave a presentation at the Colorado Traffic Incident Management Conference in Denver, Colorado. That was my 2nd time delivering a program for the Colorado Traffic Incident Management Conference. So thank you for inviting me back for the encore program and the chance to be with your audience again. November 9 to 12, I was at the International Association of Fire Chiefs Volunteer and Combination Officers Section Symposium in the Sun in Clearwater Beach, Florida, not to give a presentation per se, but to award 2 scholarships that my company sponsors for attendees to go to that conference. In November 27 to December 1, I was back at the Suncor Edmonton refinery in Edmonton, Alberta. If you're interested in hosting a live event or a virtual program, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the SA Matters homepage, and I'll give you a call. Finally, remember to check out our show notes for how to subscribe to our newsletter and how to follow us on social media. There we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 398 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you again to my guest, Phil Jose, for sharing information about tactical decision games. Thank you also to our viewers and listeners for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always. So I want to do a little cut in here at the end of the interview to make sure that you're aware of the fact that I wrote this book, Fireground Command Decision Making, Understanding the Barriers That Challenge Situational Awareness, and that I talk about very similar topics to what Phil was talking about today. And I also do some tactical decision gaming in my program. So I was just interested in getting his perspective on it as well. And if you want to learn more about Fireground Command Decision Making as a process, you could check out this book. It's available on my website, or you can reach out to Phil, or you can reach out to me, and we can help your organization with how to use tactical decision games or tactical simulations to help your members improve their situational awareness and high-risk decision making.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters show with Dr. Richard Gasaway. If you're interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit his website, samatters.com. If you're interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for a program, or if you would like to be a guest on his show, click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage.